Hello everybody, it's vanburman here. Welcome to the Game of the Year 2024 for me, vanburman. And disclaimer, because I have to make this every year. Not that anyone's ever commented on it, because not many people tend to watch these videos, so it's kind of okay. But they are only games that I have personally played that have came out this year. There is a little bit of discrepancy because we now have the early access and that kind of thing. So generally, a game can only be in, either if it's good enough and it's early access to make it into the Game of the Year for that year, then it will go in there, or if I decide I want to wait for a full release, I can then include it later on. So it kind of is down to a little bit of discretion, my own discretion, and the only game I think so far that's breached that was Baldur's Gate 3, because when it first came out, the first act was really good, and then the full game came out and it was incredible, obviously. So yes, kind of had to bend the rules a little bit there. So I tend to, and I obviously make the opposite go along. So yeah, let's get into it anyway, because I think maybe you will all be excited to hear which game has won Game of the Year. It may not be the one that you're thinking of either. So, number 5, we have Helldivers 2. So Helldivers 2, for me anyway, kind of came a little bit out of left field. That's my left. And not a game, not really a type of game, I guess, that I would traditionally enjoy, but had enough going about it, and was like the setting, everything being very like cool, nostalgic. I'm going to obviously make the comparison to Starship Troopers, and the Starship Troopers game, actually, the Extermination one, did that come out this year or the year before? I think it might have come out the year before, in 2023, and that had some nice, neat ideas in there, and wasn't a terrible game by any stretch. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible. And then Helldivers 2 seems to be like, it just needs the license, right? But obviously there's the mechs and all that sort of stuff in it. But for the bug aspect of it, anyway, which is where I spent the majority of my time when I was playing, and the multiplayer aspect and having your paradigms and being able to call in airstrikes and that kind of thing, like, it kind of adds that extra level of dynamism to the whole thing. And I believe that they've spent more time improving it since I played it, because I sort of played it in the first month of launch. Be remiss of me not to mention the issue with the Sony account, that kind of thing. Didn't and wouldn't have affected me personally, but I can see how that is very anti-consumer and not very good if you've never had a Sony/PlayStation account. So yeah, not the greatest thing to see, considering it being very popular on PC. But for me, yes, despite the fact it wasn't a game that I traditionally like, and these do crop up from time to time, I must say, particularly when I've been, for example, now got my PS2 backwards compatible PS3 it does PS2 games, because I've been able to get Battlefield 2 Modern Combat, I believe it's called, and I really enjoyed that. And I kind of like the shooters that have a bit of a twist, and the third person aspect. Helldivers 2 was really good, this setting was really good, the aesthetics were very cool, obviously, kind of tyrannical, but you know, I've played my fair share of Killzone as well, so kind of know what I'm getting into. I think that's kind of where my brain draw those parallels. But yeah, in terms of like, for a group of playing with a little group as well, like, quite fun and exciting, and like heart-stopping and like very tense, particularly when you play it on the harder difficulties as well, and it is kind of touch and go as to whether you're gonna get all the way through or not. So I think it's well deserving this year, like quite a strange inclusion, and there's probably alternative dimensions where this game doesn't make it onto the list, but still, it's well deserving of it, and that's why it's my number 5 for this year. And number 4 is a game that I played very recently, which is Felvidek, if I pronounced that right. I don't know. I'm trying to go off the pronunciation I was provided, which is an Eastern European JRPG made in one of the RPG Maker engines. do I feel the need to... I think that's important for my channel to mention that, but probably not important in the grand scheme of things. And I did a review on it very recently, so I don't really want to rehash that too much. You do feel free to go and watch that video, though it's fairly in-depth. I go through touch on quite a few bits for the game, and yeah, you'll probably understand why it's made it to the top 5 list. Definitely my type of game, much more of a shorter, curated experience, and actually did some really cool stuff with the mechanics and like a lack of a leveling system and that kind of thing. And yeah, I thought like the aesthetics and the world building and just like the general story and the, I don't know, I guess appreciating the work that had gone into it, and I had like a really good time in my 4.5-ish hours. I think if you wanted to do absolutely everything, because there were a couple of tiny little bits that I missed here and there, it's probably more like closer to 5 if you're taking your time. So it is a curated experience, but it's also quite a reasonable price as well. I think it was on sale when I bought it because it came out towards the start of the year, so it came out in March, and Helldivers came out in even earlier than that. It was January or February actually, so it was quite a good start. Was it that early? It was towards the start of the year anyway. That might be wrong. That's maybe definitely wrong. But yeah, it seems like it came out earlier on in the year. But I only got around to playing Deck very recently. And yeah, it's something I'd recommend if you're into particularly the PS1 era, JRPG style games. And yeah, it's just a nice modern twist. And a very, very good job by the developers, and assuming that they decide to make more, I would absolutely love to play. It doesn't have to be the same like continuation, but yeah, similar vein of games, I would be well up for that. So there you go, well worth number 4 on this list, and a bit of a wild card actually, because of it being quite niche and out there, I suppose. So we're going to get into the top 3 now. I have a few honourable mentions, so I kind of want to have a couple here before we get into the top 3, and then we'll have a couple before I announce the winner. And I had to write them. Ooh, I've just broken that. I had to write them down so that I remember to talk about them. So I'm going to mention, I've got 5 in total. I'm going to mention 2 here, and I'll mention a couple before we give the game of the year. So I've got, I'm not going to pronounce this, I'm going to try Kunitsugami, Path of the Goddess. I can't remember who it was released by now, I should have written that down, what publisher released it, but it's a very interesting spin on a game with mechanics that I haven't really seen before. It's kind of like a bit of a wave defense, it is a wave defense game, but you're protecting the goddess as she passes through the various gates in order to get to the end. I think the subcontext is that she might be dead and you're guiding her spirit through to the afterlife, I think is kind of what it goes. But it's based on some lore, and if someone's going to pick me up for that, I'm sure I may have interpreted that incorrectly. But the reason why it's an honourable mention, I should say, is I didn't get enough time to play it. I played through the demo, I did get the game, and I played through the first few levels, and got sidetracked and went on to other things. Sometimes it doesn't take a lot if the game doesn't fully grab me and make me want to carry on playing it. So I feel as though for that reason I've not really spent long enough in that game and in that world to be able to give it a proper score and to assess whether it would have made the top 5. It was looking very promising though, and hopefully a game I'll be able to go back to, although no guarantees because this year's looking pretty stacked with big games anyway. We've also got Manor Lords. I've been waiting for this game for quite a while. It's like a hybrid RTS, a city builder type game. And that came out in April this year. And I haven't played it. And I think the thing that kind of stopped me from doing so is I did watch a video on it. So I have seen what it was like when it first came out. And I sort of felt like it needed a bit more time to be worked on before I was going to play it. And then I kind of missed the boat to jump in. But throughout the development cycle, they kind of focus a bit more on the city building. And now I will say, it's very authentic in terms of how the buildings look, how they're constructed, even down to very minute details. And I was probably more interested in the battle aspect, which I kind of feel has been a little bit neglected from what I've seen. And I haven't played it, so that's why none of this comes from a position of authority. But yes, without actually getting in there and playing it, not sure whether it would have been on the list, but it's a game that, like I say, I've been following and wanted to play. So there's a chance with that one. And then you're probably going to spot a theme here. The other one is Blade and Sorcery, which fully released on VR, and from what I played of that, I thoroughly had a lot of fun with it earlier on, and I believe that they've actually put in like a campaign and stuff now, so it was really just like a time issue of getting into playing a bit more VR, so I tend to only really play some of the like smaller games or more like action games like the racket games and that kind of thing, because just for a bit of a quick blast, I suppose, rather than actually getting into something. I do still want to play the Half-Life Alyx game, because it looks really good. I've not played any Half-Life games previously, shock horror, but that looks like it's got really high production value and would be really good, quite a curated experience as well. So there's a couple of honourable mentions, some good, like genuinely really good games in there, or so far, and I'll do a couple more before we announce the game of the year. So, number 3, we have the full release of Peglin. So Peglin is a game that came out in early access, I believe, last year. It's one of those, I can't remember how you would really describe it. It is an orb hitting a peg and gives you points, allows you to damage enemies. You can chain different abilities together. It's kind of a bit of it is a roguelike with like bespoke runs. So as you collect your different pebbles or orbs, or whatever, there are orbs, and one of the orbs is called a pebble, you can chain these things together, and then that'll allow you to do more damage or heal your Peglin, your character, who is a Peglin, I believe. And yeah, it's quite addictive, fun, shortish runs, about an hour for a full run if you get to the end. And it's kind of similar to like Slay the Spire, but instead of cards, it's orbs, and has a lot more of a almost like chance element to it with how the how the orb bounces around the pegboard. And I had a great time in it. I think it's fun, it's addicting, it's like quite a light game as well, so something that you can like play on the go and that kind of thing. And there is space for these kind of games and experiences as well, I think, because it allows you to formulate a strategy, and there's no real, as long as it's coherent, the strategy, generally there are no bad ones. You can get a bit unlucky or lucky with certain ones, and then that allows you to just kind of explore those strategies as you play through the game. And it's very cutesy pixel art stuff, and not too, like, fairly reasonable price as well from what I recall, like kind of sub £15, and for the amount of time I've played it and enjoyment I've had out of it, is definitely worth it. And it is also one of the games that's potentially pretty good to play on the Steam Deck as well. So I kind of, or on your laptop, or anything really, because it is like quite simple, or simple requirements in terms of like graphics and that kind of thing. But yeah, very addicting, fun, no DLC or anything like that, just a nice, clean experience that's a little bit, I was going to say kind of a little bit mindless, but you do kind of have to, your decisions generally do matter to that one particular run. I suppose it has like limited utility overall, but yeah, in terms of the first like 10-15 hours, you're definitely experiencing all new things. And with the full release, they've also got different like starting Peglins. So think about Slay the Spire, and then you play as the different, like the robot guy, mech guy, and then the guy with the poison stuff, sorcerer. I can't remember what his name is now. Been a while since I played Slay the Spire. Looking forward to Slay the Spire 2 though, which I think is due to come out in 2025. So we'll see whether that makes it onto that list or not when that comes out. But yeah, well worth it, had a lot of fun, and due to the full release, like I say, played it a lot last year as well, that's why it's going to get number 3. Very good. Would recommend, obviously. And the penultimate game, number 2, the bronze medal, goes to Palworld. Now, Palworld did come out towards the start of this year. I know that they're in some issues at the moment in terms of they may not be able to use their spheres now for their monsters, their small monsters that might fit into pockets. I don't think many of them will fit into pockets, but basically sort of known as Pokemon with guns. Now, I think
Why is it number 2? So it's number 2 because I had a lot of fun with the game. I think it really had, not that it was particularly difficult, but really did highlight the issues that there currently is with things like the Pokemon games and that kind of thing, and sort of where that experience could go to. I'm not saying we hand Pikachu an AK-47 at all, but there is that like gameplay loop that is definitely missing from Pokemon that doesn't kind of feel as impactful like it did in Power World. And I think it took a lot of the good stuff about Pokemon, and took out a lot of the bad stuff, while also then adding in that kind of survival element, which I'm not really that keen on that bit, but I quite like the fact that there is like this base defense element to it. I'm quite keen on that kind of approach. I think it's quite cool. You get to use your powers that you've collected. There's like these boss battles, which are quite tricky actually in order to win consistently anyway. But yeah, it seems well appreciated by the fan base as well, which is really nice to see. Well, there's like, it's very polarizing, right? Traditional kind of Pokemon fans will naturally talk it down because they're very much committed and see it as a bit of a threat, whereas people are a bit more casual, I suppose, casual Pokemon fans, kind of see potentially how it may, like myself, I suppose, where it may help the series long term, in terms of giving it like a viable like pathway to being better. And particularly as I also, is it this year or last year? I can't remember when it came out. I also played a little bit of Violet as well, Pokemon Violet, and it was really bad. I didn't run very well, and it was a bit of a strange story and setup. Like, why am I riding a Pokemon like a motorbike? Not really too sure. And I heard some stuff, although this is unconfirmed, because I've not really gone into it in any detail, but I've heard that potentially Nintendo have tried to change their patent in order to be able to sue the developers of Power World, which, if so, is a real shoddy thing to do. You can replace shoddy with something with another word of your choice. But yeah, it's kind of not surprising because Nintendo are very litigious and will go after anyone that tries to do anything with their IP. And funnily enough, it actually got me thinking about the Pokemon Uranium game, which is a RPG Maker made, like free, like fan made Pokemon game, which is very, very good, by the way, and I would recommend going and checking it out if you're very much interested in Pokemon. But yeah, I imagine they must have had some issues as well, even though it was a free fan made game, whereas obviously Power World sold very well, very successful for this year. So yeah, I think it's more the case that I had a lot of fun with it. It played really well on the Steam Deck as well. And yeah, I think for the time that I played it, which was in January and February, quite a lot, like almost exclusively, I had a great time. It's not something that I have any real urge to go back to. I know they've had some updates with some new powers and new challenges and that kind of stuff, but yeah, I'm not like, was never that fully invested where I'm going to be maining this game for a very, very long time, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I'd quite like to have my experience that has a beginning and has an end nowadays, and a bit of closure is kind of important, whereas I provided that myself rather than from Power World, the Power World game. And yeah, if you've not played it, I'm not sure how the future of the game will look in terms of where this lawsuit and things go. So I guess it's quite difficult for me to say like concretely that you should go out and play it. I think unfortunately it probably needs a bit more investment on the part of the person buying the game now, particularly with this lawsuit and the changes that might come in. But for my part, and the game that I played, the version that I played through at the start of the year, it was really good, and actually, funnily enough, was number one for quite a while, until I went back and reviewed this other game that I was playing for, once again, quite a while earlier on in the year, but didn't actually complete it, and went through and completed it, and that's why Power World is slipped down into number 2 position in the end. But yes, if you can, I don't know if they're going to allow people to roll back the versions or not on Power World, but that might be an idea. I don't know. Probably not though. So, we have some honourable mentions before we get to the Game of the Year. The last couple. So we do have the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Splintered Fate game. It's a roguelike, kind of similar to Hades, and it's actually really good. I've spent quite a few hours playing it, and I've enjoyed it. I think I haven't really got far enough in it to be able to concretely add it to this list. I guess for reference, where I'm sort of feeling it is myself, it's kind of on par with Helldivers 2, so kind of like a joint fifth position, if you like, if that makes you feel better. But I think it's something that's definitely worth looking at, picking up when it's on sale, particularly if you're into roguelike games and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because yeah, it's done very nicely. The art style's pretty good, the abilities are good. The upgrade paths as well kind of make sense. There's maybe one too many different currencies, which, yeah, you know how you need different things to unlock different stuff. I think kind of maybe homogenising that might have made things a little bit more streamlined. But yeah, it's good, and you get to spend time with all 4 of the turtles, and I think you can also, yes, that's the other thing as well, it's also co-op and multiplayer, so you can get a bunch of you together and play through it together as well, which I actually think would be a lot of fun. Not done that, so kind of difficult to know how that works, if that's any good. And then the other one is No More Room in Hell 2, so that did come out this year. However, it's in early access, and I think it still needs a bit more time in the oven before it's ready for prime time, which is kind of what early access is for. So I will evaluate that game in its totality when it does have its full release. So watch this space, I suppose. I was quite impressed with it when I did play through it. There were some bugs and glitches and that kind of thing. So yeah, I think if it has some more time in the oven, full release, look at it again. But yeah, just kind of depends on how that development, now it's in a sort of, I guess I'd call it like a stable alpha build, kind of. And yeah, does need more work. And hopefully we will expand on some more of the more classic themes as well from the original No More Room in Hell. But I think it's getting there, and I had a good time in the few hours that I've played and the few maps that I've played on it so far. So yes, well worth a mention in this year's video. And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Number 1, you've already seen it. Game of the Year, Dragon's Dogma 2. Do I need to say anything more? Yes, probably, actually. Because it's not been a very popular choice for Game of the Year, as we know in the unofficial awards, or in the whatever. Astrobot won, which is kind of a weird one. And there were some other good contenders that I haven't played this year, like Black Myth, Wukong, which I wanted to. Once again, didn't get around to. I kind of sort of sacrificed playing that in order to go back and pick back up Dragon's Dogma 2, and I'm actually really glad that I did. I don't think I would have enjoyed Wukong as much as Dragon's Dogma 2. I think it's so difficult for me to summarise quickly Dragon's Dogma 2. So I had thought to do a full review. Don't think I will. I don't think I really have the time or inclination to do it. That might change. Or the footage, actually, as well. But, I don't know, maybe I will. But anyway, Dragon's Dogma 2 was definitely the best game of this year. It's the game where I had the most sort of fleshed out experience, even though I dropped it after about 10 hours and came back into it. Like, I really enjoyed playing through the game, unlocking the new abilities, seeing the story through. It felt like very much like a grand RPG. Now, it doesn't do everything right. Don't get me wrong. It's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. But, you know, when you consider it to, like, as well this year, because you always do these comparisons, don't you? But when you think about, I also played Veilguard this year, and Dragon's Dogma 2 is so far ahead of Veilguard. Like, I could have played the demo of Dragon's Dogma 2 and it would be better, and it'd be better than the whole experience that's in Dragon Age Veilguard. And I think it's just the simple stuff that you didn't appreciate before, like of actually having not control over your party members, but a bit more control, and them actually having their own life bar and their own personality and their own traits and that kind of thing. Like, because that's how the pawns work in Dragon's Dogma 2. They sort of mimic the personality and play style of their Arisen. So Arisen is the main character that you create and other players create, and you borrow their pawn. What are the pawns? So they're like secondary character that's kind of like a bit of a. They're kind of mysterious. I don't really. There is a little bit. We learn more about them in this game, but yeah, they only answer to the Arisen, and other pawns come in from different players' games. You can have them trying to accomplish different tasks to unlock extra skills, more money, that kind of thing. And then when you send that pawn back to their other player, you can give them an item and give them a thanks or a love heart and that kind of thing, and a player report card and all that sort of stuff, which sounds really silly, but you actually have kind of more meaningful not interactions, but like experiences through battle and through exploration with the pawns, which you just don't really get in anything else. There's nothing else really like it, and that's what made Dragon's Dogma the first kind of, I guess, into this like cult classic kind of barrier, or fence, because it's quite small, and that's sort of where Dragon's Dogma 2 fits in as well. Like they're kind of niche, I would suggest, like niche, nice things that come together. I guess in the same way that the Middle Earth Shadow of Mordor War did with their like Nemesis system. Like it's different, it's unique to that type of game, and I thoroughly enjoyed playing through that in Dragon's Dogma 2, and on the flip side to that, I will say it does get a bit annoying when you get the same like canned dialogue from the pawns. It does run out of variation when you play through your 60-hour playthrough. So yeah, I don't know, maybe like less frequency, more voice lines, but still, it's a good time, and it allows you to think about the composition of your skills, how they interact. You can't assign skills to other players' pawns, so you need to bring in the right type of pawn that fits your party of 4 altogether. So it's your main character, whatever vocations you decide to have, your pawn, which is only limited to the pawn vocations, and then 2 others that can come in from the Rift, it's called. Oh gosh, and now I have to talk about Rift crystals, which are one of the in-game currencies that you can buy. Why ruin it, Capcom? Why do this? So yeah, a big negative is the fact that you can buy these Rift crystals. I have loads in my game that I've just never used because I've never had to. But the fact that there is a commercialized aspect to these Rift crystals kind of feels like they wanted to have something that could go in where they could make some money off an in-game currency, but didn't go in far enough where it's actually required in playing or enjoyment of the game at all. Just maybe if you get down to the minutiae, or you want to, because one of the main things that you use these crystals for is to recruit pawns that are much higher level than where you are. And it doesn't really cost that much to get a pawn that's a few levels ahead, and they're fairly common throughout the world, I suppose, the Rift crystals. You can get them through playing the game and exploration. So yeah, it kind of just, I don't know, it is egregious with the fact that it's in there, but I don't really know how they thought they were going to make any money from it. It's a tick box exercise, it's a new game, it must have an in-game currency, I'm not sure. But yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, and is worth mentioning because it is one of the big negatives in the game. And the other negative, I suppose, as well, although this is not unique to Dragon's Dogma 2, I've recently replaying Kingdom Come Deliverance, and that has really poor stealth mechanics as well. But yeah, the stealth mechanics in Dragon's Dogma 2 are really weird and bizarre considering the amount of stealth missions it wants you to do. And that's actually what put me off playing it from when I played it the first time. The reason I dropped it is because I had these stealth missions to do, and the stealth is just rubbish. Like, it can't be done effectively, even apart from with a vocation. So like you got like sorcerer, archer, that kind of thing. There's a vocation that you unlock much later on that would actually help with stealth and could be a stealth kind of build. So yeah, it seemed kind of weird that was so early on in the game, and then you don't really do it later on. Yeah, that was a little bit of a bizarre thing. I think it could have done without that. But it doesn't take away from the experience and the story. I don't want to go into story and spoilers. If I do a review, I'll cover it there. But needless to say, like, it's really good, really impactful. I will say it kind of rushes itself towards the end to get to the end. And then the end is just like, I don't really know what I can and can't say. But I very, very much enjoyed it. And if you're willing to put the hours in and you enjoy the gameplay loop and learning your new skills, new vocations, that kind of thing, then the story's like And I'm back. Yes, sorry about that. My camera has a 30-minute recording limit, and I've reached that. So there you go. Tell just how long this video is. It's kind of a little bit of a marker to me as well to say, come on, it's time to wrap it up. But yes. Anyway. I thoroughly enjoyed Dragon's Dogma 2, having gone back and played through it. Spent about 50-ish hours playing it and wanted to come back and wanted to play it. And I very much would love to see a Dragon's Dogma 3 at some point in the works. I think it's unique enough and interesting enough and quirky enough where there's a lot more they could still do with it, and just the gameplay and stuff in general. I wouldn't say it's particularly user-friendly. It does take a little bit of getting past the barrier into it, but I kind of feel as though the really good RPGs are kind of a bit like that. Because that's definitely how I felt with Witcher 3 at the start, for example. It's kind of a bit painful to get into, but once you're in it, you are very much in it. And yeah, it's always nice as well, for me personally, when it's not done this way on purpose, necessarily, but when an RPG is good enough that it is the top game of the year, and where I've had a good enough experience where I finish the game and you just sort of like sit back in your chair a little bit and take a bit of a deep breath, a big exhale, and you're like, wow, that was good. That was satisfying. And that's what I genuinely got from Dragon's Dogma 2. So it kind of also makes me want to go back and play Dragon's Dogma 1, because I only got really a certain way through that as well. So it made me appreciate that game a lot more as well, even though I've always known empirically it's a good, quirky game. But yeah, Dragon's Dogma 2 is the next rung up the chain for that. And it was kind of a bit of a surprise to see it even being released at all. So I think does it bode well for a Dragon's Dogma 3? Possibly. It didn't really do very well in the mainstream media for this year, but then I would say I'm not always in tune with the mainstream for these Game of the Year awards, but that's fine by me. So I'm going to leave you with, and I'm forcing myself to do this now because I've not edited anything yet, but I'm going to leave you with a little bit of a compilation from Dragon's Dogma 2 with just one of the particular abilities that I found quite amusing. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I don't know when you'll see this, but Happy New Year. Hope you have a great 2025, or if I'm watching this in years in the future, hope you're having a great time. Do let me know what you thought of my list. Let me know what your game of the year for this year would be. I don't really mind if that's a game you've played this year or a game that released this year. It'd just be good to see what you've been enjoying. So, thank you very much. I will see you all next year. Bye for now.